Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and today I'm interviewing James Arena-DeRosa, who's the Democrat candidate for the 8th Middlesex District. You will have the opportunity to hear him answer the same questions that his opponent has already taped, and you can listen to both and get answers to all the same questions and sort of draw a picture for yourself of what they are about. So let's start right out. Hi, James. Good to see you.
How are you? Great to see you too, Mary.
Yeah, take care of yourself during all of this process. This is a grueling kind of activity.
It is, but I'm up for the challenge and enjoying it. So.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. Well, I got to the point where I hated them. But anyway, so please just take a minute, couple of minutes to tell the viewers who you are, why you're running for this district.
Sure. I'm happy to. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome.
Great public service that you're doing this. We have been blessed with wonderful representation from Carolyn Dykema. I'm honored that I was voted by the Democrats in this district to be the Democratic nominee in November. I'm looking forward to the next several weeks. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in an activist home, very influenced by my mom. We had freedom riders, environmental activists, community people, hunger walks. That was the home I grew up in. And since I was young, I've always wanted to make a difference in the lives of others. Pumped gas at my uncle's gas station, worked my way through Xaverian and Harvard, was involved with the farm workers, had leadership roles at Oxfam, Peace Corps, and USDA with the Obama administration. And I think there were always sort of two common tenets to that work. One is I always tried to make sure I was helping people and communities meet their basic needs. And I also tried to help communities make sure that their voices were being heard in the corridors of power. I'm proud of the work that I've done, and we'll probably get to it in some of the questions. But I also, in my community work, I feel like I'm a person of the community. I served on the Finance Committee here in Holliston. I coached Little League Baseball. I was a volunteer for arts and music. Been part of Holliston Celebrate Day for as long as I can remember. Lena, my wife, ran the senior center for years here in Holliston. We're both very involved, very devoted, love the community. A little bit about the role and how I see it. And there's really three parts. One is you are the lead advocate that works closely with the town leaders in each town to make sure the town's getting the resources that it needs, and also that you're working through any problems with issues that are affecting the communities here in the district. A second piece is you make state policy, policies that affect the Commonwealth, but also in this current climate, it's important to be a part of the Democratic legislature that is fighting back against this right-wing Supreme Court that is been assaulting the rights of the residents of Massachusetts that we've been fighting for years to protect. So that's an important part of the role. And then third, and both Carolyn and Dave Linsky, who represented Millis and Sherburne until recently, both have said, remember, constituent services, being that person that people can look to when they need help navigating the bureaucracy, navigating the government. I think those are all parts of the role. I look forward to this. I intend to serve full-time if I'm elected, to be available and accessible to the people of the district.
Okay. So do you consider yourself a progressive, a liberal, a moderate, a conservative, or something else? I don't know.
Yeah, a little both. So on social justice issues, I definitely lean toward the liberal progressive side, protect a woman's right to choose, marriage equity, social and economic justice, all kinds of issues related to helping people meet their needs. But I also am I like to think I'm a common sense Democrat when it comes to managing our money. I served on a finance committee. I think towns do a great job managing the tight resources that they have. When I worked in government, I had to hold organizations accountable for the millions of dollars and government agencies accountable for the millions of dollars that they spent. We only have so much money. We have to be prudent. We have to use some common sense about where we make our investments. We have to think about, are things in sync? Are we working for the long term? And as someone who's worked in business with family business and worked with a lot of businesses when I was at USDA, we'll maybe touch on that later, we've got to have some common sense on all the parameters and restrictions and the bureaucracy that we put small businesses through. I think we can do a better job with that.
So please tell me who your favorite political figure is or was. It could be somebody who's already died.
Yes. I would choose Bobby Kennedy. I think he had this great passion to make a difference in the lives of others, was someone who cared deeply about human beings, was interested, and also thought that we as a society could celebrate our differences and yet all work together. And he was beloved by a great cross-section of the American people, which is kind of a cool thing. I also think that he was a lifelong learner. He wasn't afraid to keep asking questions, learning more about the war, about poverty, about how he could make a difference, and I think that's a sign of a good leader, a willingness to listen and learn and maybe course correct along the way. But he also was very pragmatic and practical. He had no tolerance for government corruption, had no tolerance for government waste. I think he asked for the very best for the people around him, and to me was a true public servant. Okay.
What is it that you offer this district that is unique to you?
I think the biggest thing that I offer is a depth of experience. I'm touched on the organizations I've worked for, but I have experience, leadership experience at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. And we're entering this era right now that so many of the issues that we're going to be dealing with, it's going to be a combination of resources coming from different places, issues that are coming down from the state, issues that play out at the local level that connect with the national level. I'm comfortable in the corridors of power. I know a lot of those people. I'm always going to remember my community roots in terms of who I am as a person, but I think that experience is going to position me really well to serve in the role of state representative. And specifically, you know, I think of when I worked at USDA for Obama, I was the regional administrator. I had a $12 billion budget, served 20 million Americans. Food security is so foundational to so many parts of our life. Let me just quickly run through all the groups and organizations I worked with and people leading government, whether it was educators or public health or agriculture or environment, people that deal with the water, people that deal with the land, food processors, food producers. All of these things are part of food security and our food system in the United States. You work with restaurants. I mean, it just, I had this great breadth of experience that I offer the people of the district, which I think will come in handy as we address the many issues ahead.
Okay. I think you already touched on this a little bit, so you don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but the job itself is complex. You do have to deal with local government. You've got state issues, you've got national issues, you've got, so what's your job?
You know, it's a great question. I'm often asked, you know, do you see yourself as a Beacon Hill rep or a local rep? And my answer is both, because I think to be effective in this role, you have to immerse yourself in the day-to-day issues of the communities that you hope to serve, really get to understand those issues and embed yourself. But then you have to take what you've learned and engage the policymaking that's going on at the State House and in the executive offices. So, and that's why I think the only way to do this is full-time, because you have to extend yourself to the community in any way that you can. You also have to be present in all the work that goes on in Beacon Hill. It is a combination of those things. And always being mindful of the importance of constituent services, because sometimes your state rep is that one person that people can look to when they need help navigating the bureaucracy. So it is a combination of all those things. And of course, you also make state policy. And we are in a national crisis right now with a very conservative right-wing Supreme Court. The Massachusetts legislature is the bulwark against what they have done to protect the rights of people in Massachusetts. So being part of that is important as well.
There's one other piece to that I'm just going to touch on,
Sure.
just that sometimes I find that the legislator is able to come back to Holliston and sort of translate state policy, you know, to sort of bring it home in a way that you might not get if you're just reading it on the newspaper or something.
Point, well, absolutely, Mary. Important point, because you're sometimes, what you're then learning on what's going on, you're translating it, bringing it back, and then maybe course correct. Did you know that this is going on at the state level? Here's what we might not do. Here's another opportunity. Oh, absolutely. That interplay and back and forth, which is why those relationships with town leaders and people in the communities is so important.
So what do you hope to accomplish as one of 240 legislators?
So if I'm fortunate to be elected, ask me that question when I come back in a year or two. I might give you a different answer. But if I could do one thing, and I think about this, it's that when the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, when the legislature, or when executive offices are promulgating rules and regulations, that as they develop their rules and their laws, they think about and include and engage the communities that are going to be affected by the laws that they're passing. Too many times those people are left out of the discussion and it causes problems. You know, too often I'll look at something new that the legislature passed and I'll say, oh, guess nobody from a small town was around the table when that was being decided. The MBTA Communities Act, what a mess that became. And now it's a little better and there's been some good back and forth. But I think that, you know, this is a philosophy that's part of my DNA from Oxfam and Peace Corps and the farm workers. And I believe in it because I think there's a certain sense of justice around it, in that everyone in the community should have a voice in the decisions that affect them. But beyond that, I also truly believe it because I think you get better solutions that way. You get better answers. You get better progress when everyone who's affected is able to offer potential solutions or ways issues are affecting them. So that would be, if I could accomplish that, that would be a big thing.
It would be a big thing. So what do you think the top 2 issues are that affect this district and might face you in the House, and do you have positions on them?
Yeah. So there's an environmental crisis and overlay to all that we do, but you have a specific question about the environment, so I'll hold on that. I think that 2 things that come up often. One is there's this growing concern about affordability. I talk to seniors on fixed incomes that are worrying about being able to afford to stay in the towns that they've lived their whole lives in, young people who want to buy housing, or want to be able to live or afford rent. I think this, there's concern about inflation. There's a lot that's starting to really affect our day-to-day lives here in our communities, and I think there are some systemic issues that the state has not addressed. On a day-to-day basis, I think we've done okay, but I think that affordability is something that really is coming to the fore. I have some specific things that I think, again, it's part of your question, so we'll be efficient with time. But the other issue, and this one comes time and again, so many town leaders have talked to me about this incessant continuation of unfunded state mandates where the state sits down and said, here are some issues, you now need to do this, but you go figure out how much money, we're not going to help you with it. And I think it's bad public policy, and I think the small towns particularly who have very tight budgets have been hurt by this. I know this issue has kicked around for years. We've got to cobble together a coalition. It's not just affecting our district, it's affecting people throughout the Commonwealth, and I think we need to do a better job with that. So I think those 2 systemic issues are things that need to be addressed.
Okay. So in general, what's your opinion of Charlie Baker's governorship? Did you agree with him the majority of the time? Did he handle COVID okay?
So I think Charlie Baker was a good governor. I think he's done some good things. I think in almost every other state, Charlie Baker would be a Democrat. I think he was forthright around the election of 2020 when he said no, it was a legitimate election. I think that was helpful to have a voice saying that. He was a voice of reason during some challenging times. I think certainly he supported the Massachusetts legislature when they wanted to fight back against the Supreme Court. So I think he's done some good things around that. And I think on a day-to-day basis, I think Charlie does a good job, and I pretty much have agreed. I think there are some systemic issues that have not been addressed that are critical for the state. I think one of them connects to what I just mentioned, affordability. I think we have a housing crisis in this state. Some of it is about housing stock. Some of it is about housing and affordability, and I don't think enough has been done. And I really think it's something that needs to be addressed soon and in the coming years. So I think that's one thing that hasn't really been dealt with. I think the other thing is we have an infrastructure that's weak and crumbling. I mean, studies have shown that a lot of our bridges are not safe. I mean, there's a safety issue that's coming to the fore. Our hope is that the $12 billion that the Biden administration just passed that will come to Massachusetts from the infrastructure bill will help with those things. It's kind of interesting that the Globe a few weeks ago sort of called out the legislature and said, why wasn't there oversight? The MBTA had to shut down some lines for a month to do repairs. And my reaction to that is, fair question. But I also ask, well, what about the person who's running the state, and what about the executive office that runs transportation? They also should be held accountable for that, because they were running the state, and here we have this huge problem. So I think around some of those systemic issues, I think we can do better. I'm very excited about the potential of working with Maura Healey and Kim Driscoll, 2 dynamic leaders that are going to lead our state in the coming years. They both are enthusiastically supporting my campaign for state representative. It'd be wonderful to work with them. I think they both would roll their sleeves up and really address these larger issues. In terms of COVID, I think that mixed. I think in terms of highlighting the emergency, pulling people together, the importance of masking, listening to the science. I think Charlie Baker and the government did an excellent job. I really do. Where I think that we could improve, where I question some of the strategy, was in the vaccine rollout. Because as it started, and I was talking to the head of public health in Hopkinton this weekend, and he said, we've been trained for things like this, and we started getting ready, and we started planning vaccine rollout so we could get it to our local people. Lena was doing 200 vaccines a week with the senior center in public health, and it meant that people only had to travel 5 minutes and could just call somebody and make an appointment. And then what did the state do? The state said, oh no, we're not going to do any more local. We're just going to do these big mega centers. Go to Gillette, go to Fenway. And I wouldn't have minded if that was in addition to what was being done. I thought it was a mistake to undercut the local public health people. We had problems in some communities. Sometimes people, their most trusted health partner is the person serving in local public health, at local community health center, and that's why some communities, I thought, didn't take up the vaccine as well as they could have. And I think the state could have done a much better job with that, and I think they made a mistake not trusting local community health folks. And I think there's still some issues. We have a lot to learn about what happened in COVID. I think there's an overlay to COVID, and I wouldn't just lay this at the feet of Massachusetts. I think every state struggled with this. We learned a lot of things. I worked with FEMA and MEMA when I was at USDA on disaster relief. Most of our disaster preparedness in this country is focused on a natural disaster.
Right.
And we do a pretty good job of it. We actually do a pretty good job of it. We need to be ready for the next pandemic. There are things that we're going to have to do as a state. But again, I think every state and the country itself has struggled with those things, and we're going to have to learn a lot. But when we learn, I hope we're talking to all the right people. I hope the frontline nurses and healthcare people and public safety folks are all at the table when we're talking, and small businesses, on how COVID affected them, and you know, not just the bigwigs that run things. Let's get everyone around the table to see what we learned.
Okay. I'm guessing I know the answer to this. National politics hang over all of us. So was 2020 election legitimate?
I believe that it was. I think that, you know, and some of the Republicans are really disingenuous. They raise millions of dollars around purported fraud. Then they win their contested primaries. And they're like, oh, no, it was an okay election. It was fine. You know, so yeah, a number of them are doing this. They're pulling it off their websites, changing their tune. I mean, come on. I think it was a free and fair election, and all the studies have shown there was no systemic fraud.
Okay. Do you think that elections in this state are run fairly?
I do think they are. I think the Secretary of State does an excellent job. I think the town clerks do an excellent job running elections. I've gotten to know several of them in the past several months. I think they do a great job keeping track of things. Again, I'm very confident in our town clerks and city clerks in Massachusetts. I'm a little concerned that they're getting all this, in some towns, all these requests are getting put on them at a time when we're supposed to be getting ready for the state election. So I hope somebody can step in and say, well, okay, it's freedom of information. We'll get you that info, but you know, until November 10th, we're going to leave these people alone. So we'll see how that plays out. But I trust them.
Okay. All right. So a few quick questions. Should COVID vaccines be mandated?
I don't think vaccines for COVID should be universally mandated. I do think it's fine that certain public entities can say you want to be part and serve the public, whether it's the military, public safety, or public health. I do think it's fine to do it in that context. But for private industry, you know, people can make their own choice about what to do or not do.
All right. Individual parents, how much should their views play into the curriculum and education in the public schools?
Yeah, you know, so parents should certainly have a voice in their children's education. Lee and I had a great relationship with Holliston schools, but we have a system that I think works well. Teachers run the classroom and the departments. Administrators run the school system. The school committee has oversight of the school system. There are plenty of opportunities for parents to have input, either for their individual child or the system. If they want even more input, run for school committee or work with someone on school committee that you like. I mean, there are ways for people to get involved, but I think in general we have a system that works pretty well.
Okay. Abortion. Do women have the right to choose?
They absolutely have the right to choose. I cannot think of anything more personal than a woman's right to choose. I will defend that right. I think this is going to be an issue that's we're going to see in the coming years, continuing to come back at us. What's interesting about this issue, the CDC looked at the history of abortion. There were fewer abortions during Democratic administrations, even though we defend and fight for the right of women to choose, because it's a woman's right to choose. She can decide what she wants to do, but what about birth control? What about access to birth control? What about child nutrition, paid maternity leave? The other side fights us on all of those things that would help with the larger issue, but I will always defend a woman's right to choose.
Voter identification. Should people be issued identification for purposes of voting?
I don't think we need another layer. I mean, the clerk, there's a pretty rigorous process when you register to vote to prove who you are. And then the clerks on a regular basis keep up with the database and whether people have moved or not. And if you're an inactive voter for a number of years, the clerk's office at its discretion can say, well, we're going to let you back on, but you've got to tell us you got to prove who you are. I think there are plenty of things in place right now. I don't think we need to add a layer of bureaucracy. Our elections have been seen to not have been fraudulent and to be free and fair, and unless that ever has a hint of that changing, and we can always look at it, but I think I think we're fine where we are right now.
Is it ever appropriate to ban books?
I don't think so, and I don't think the public should get into this debate. Look, I trust our librarians and our educators to use common sense and be thoughtful about age-appropriate material. The discussion about what's appropriate for certain ages, that's fine. That should be something we have. But banning books, I think, is extreme. And I think with the Internet being so ubiquitous, it's more grandstanding. People can get whatever they want anyway. It's
far beyond what they want.
Well, and so, you know, it's more about grandstanding and political posturing. So
the Mass Pike, keep the tolls or not?
I think we keep them for now. I don't want to add any because I think we have to look at all this money coming in and out and what we're doing before we decide whether we're going to increase it. I do have a question about the way we pay for road repair in Massachusetts, and I think that it defies common sense. Here we go again, but it does. You talk to anybody at the DPW, and when they maintain their roads, and I've talked to several of them, the first thing they can take into consideration is wear and tear and road usage, right? Makes sense, right? Roads that get used more are going to need more repair. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in its Chapter 90 money to the cities and towns, does not take into account how much the roads are used. Our 4 towns that I hope to represent sit on, you know, we're on commuter pathways to Boston, 80,000 vehicles a day for some communities. And yet, our towns get treated like some towns in Western Mass, maybe have the same population, same number of roads, but nowhere near the road usage. So I think to be smarter, we've got to address it in a better way.
That's an interesting point. I didn't realize that. So are drivers for Uber and Lyft independent contractors, or are they employees?
Yeah. So we're in this uncharted territory with the gig economy, right? And we're going to have these discussions for years to come. And I think my answer is, it depends, and we're going to have to be flexible as we look at it. Let me give you some very specific examples. I was driving once with a driver who has a regular job during the week. He, on the weekends, works one night, maybe 2 nights a week, pick up some extra money. I have no problem with that person being considered an independent contractor. Fine. Seems to work fine for him, work for the system. And then I met a woman, a single mom, who drives 50 hours a week, who's trying to make ends meet for her family and is frustrated that she has no place, no conversation to have about working conditions, hours, time off, because, you know, she's not considered an employee, and she feels like she is an employee of the corporation. I think she is too. There is a place in our economy for independent contractors. I know for some people it's flexible and it works out very well. No problem. I've done it before. I mean, there's not a problem with the concept. But I think in this nascent economy, we know that there are big corporations that are abusing people and really taking advantage of them. And you know, something that's driving 40, 50 plus hours a week, to me, they are a full-time employee.
Should all taxpayers pay the same percentage of their income toward taxes?
So in state, I'm all right with our current system in general, the way it's structured. I do support the Fair Share Amendment. I'll talk about why I think it's important. It would add 4% on incomes of more than $1 million. Despite what the ads might say, it only is going to affect 1% of the population. It's not going to affect that many of us. And it's also going to help support education and infrastructure, 2 things that are really important. It's kind of interesting. Big business is throwing a lot of money into it. A number of small business people are supporting the Fair Share Amendment. The average small business in this country makes about $100,000 a year. They are not going to pay tax. They're not going to get affected by this. They also, one of the common complaints, in addition to sort of too much bureaucracy and regulation for small business, they're concerned about the quality of the workforce, and they're concerned about access to good transportation infrastructure. Those are 2 things that are going to be dealt with. So a lot of business people are saying, we actually support this. So it's kind of interesting as you see the different sides line up. I just want to throw one thing out there as food for thought about this. If someone's making $1 million, and I know it's federal, but still, they only pay 1% of their income on Social Security. If you make less than $150,000, you pay 6%. So I think they can afford that 4% and help the greater Commonwealth for this particular bill. But in general, I wouldn't make other changes to the tax system right now.
Should people earn enough money working a 40-hour work week to support themselves? Is the state obligated to support or help them?
Yeah, Mary, this is a great question. And I think ideally, yes. We'd love to have an economy where if somebody works full-time, they can meet their basic needs. We should, but we don't. it's going to be a challenge. We have to address wage equity because we're seeing struggles and systemic issues with it. But this is an area where Massachusetts can't do it alone. This is related to the global economy, and we need a need for a global living wage. We have to work regionally because we don't want to hurt our businesses if we go out on alone. I think we have to address it, but we have to be smart about the way we address it. But I want to just point out a real flaw in the current construct right now. I don't want to pick on McDonald's and Walmart, but I will. I'll pick on them. So
big targets.
Yeah. So most of the Target actually pays their employees better. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just being a wise guy. But they don't pay their employees enough, most of them, to take care of their families. Yeah. And so what they do, they also teach their employees how to get food stamps. Now it's called SNAP now, but most people know it more colloquially as food stamps. So now, listen, as someone who was administrated that program among many others, I certainly want to make sure people have enough food to eat, and I don't want to stop that. But I just want to point out the contradiction in the system. Look what's going on. Your tax dollars and my tax dollars are going to Walmart and McDonald's because they're not paying their employees enough money, so we're helping their employees eat. I just don't think that's good public policy, right? It's corporate welfare. We don't call it that, but we probably should. And it defies common sense. I don't like the way it's structured, but we have a lot of work to do to get there because right now people don't have enough food to eat on a regular basis. But this is a huge issue. I think wage equity is something we're going to talk more about in the years to come, but it's going to have to require a comprehensive solution with a lot of players involved. And my caution would be, yes, I'm supportive of changing things and doing things. We've got to have that floor of people to help meet their basic human needs, but we need to be thoughtful as we move ahead.
Identify the most important environmental issues facing this district, the suburbs, and in fact all of state government.
Yeah. So I picked water, and then also wastewater and disposal, if you will. If you think about the future of water, I mean, here we are, we just experienced one of the worst droughts of our lives, right? So we know there's an issue with water, just in terms of availability is an issue, but it's an essential element for life. We know there are public health ramifications about the quality of our water. It's an essential element for many businesses. I mean, this is one of our issues with downtown in Holliston because there's not waste treatment. We can't get restaurants. I mean, and then in some towns they can't continue to develop because there's not enough water in the system to supply new homes, new housing, and new support. Let me mention one specific just to kind of make it concrete for people. And here's another frustration I have with the way the state does things. So you may have heard of PFAS. It's the forever chemicals that are in the water. They're not good for you. The federal government has a regulation of that if it's above 70 parts per trillion, it's deemed unhealthy. The state of Massachusetts in 2020 decided, no, we're going to make it 20 parts per million, and then told towns, now you got to fix your water systems if anything goes over 20. Unfortunately, and this is where we're out of sync, and again, it doesn't make sense the way the policy was done. The funding that would hopefully accompany it isn't going to happen for several years down the road. The legislature just finished their task force work, Representative Hogan. They finished up in the spring. The money will maybe be available in 23 and 24. So what are we doing? We're telling cities and towns, you got to fix this, but we're not going to tell you for 3 or 4 years how much money is going to be available. It's not fair, and it's not right, and it's not good public policy. The town of Hopkinton, first of all, Millis has already been slammed with millions of dollars, but the town of Hopkinton is now doing a study, and they're trying to decide, do we fix our wells, do some blending and fixing, or do we hook up to the MWRA? This is a $40 or $50 million proposition. This is a huge project for the town. Now, it's up to the town of Hopkinton to decide what's best for them, right? However, to me, it's the role of the state government, and I will do all I can as state rep, to be able to say, all right, if you choose path A, this is how much will be available from the PFAS fund. If you choose path B, this is how much will be available. But right now, they don't have that information. I don't think it's fair to the town. So I think the Commonwealth has to be more in sync. Water is going to be an issue that we're going to deal with for years to come. And let's get the regulations in sync with the funding to be fair to the communities in Massachusetts.
Okay, so this is the last question. If this district overwhelmingly supported a ballot question, and it ends up before the legislature, because they always do, because a ballot is never detailed enough to be a law.
That's right.
Okay, so what do you do? Do you honor how your district voted, or do you honor what the debate suggests?
So I'd like to think that I'm going to be in sync enough with the voters that won't happen, but it's your hypothetical, so I'll answer the question. It's kind of a cool question. It's interesting. I would first spend as much time as I could really trying to understand those who proposed the ballot issue that was successful, so that what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Were there things that we didn't communicate if I happened to be on the other side? Are there places for compromise? I'd want to understand that. I do think it's really important, though, that you honor people just voted something. I'm not big on something gets voted by the population and then the legislature immediately, changes it. I don't think that's right. I think we should get some experience around it, be able to come back and say, well, here's what we learned in the last year or two. Now maybe we need to rethink this again. So I'm not big on sort of knee-jerk immediate reactions to things, because I don't think that's fair. I think you do have to be respectful of the residents of the district. But I mostly would want to understand as much as I could about the issue at play.
Okay. Now you've got a couple of minutes to give us that final pitch.
Sure.
And don't forget to say when the election is.
Yes.
Okay?
I'll try. You can remind me if I don't add that. So Mary, first of all, thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity. The voters in this district, thank you, have a clear choice. I believe that I have the experience that will make me a great partner with the communities of this district in the months and years ahead. I think that I have the passion and energy to serve. I intend to serve full time. I intend to be available to the residents of this district in any way that I can. I also think it's important. I am a Democrat. We have to fight back against this conservative Supreme Court. There are going to be so many issues that are going to come before the country that are going to filter down to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We need to fight back against this right-wing assault on the issues that many of us in Massachusetts have been fighting for years and years and years, whether it's around choice, marriage equity, civil rights, environment, guns. You can go down the list. Those are going to be important battles in years to come. I am very pleased that I have wonderful support from so many organizations like Planned Parenthood, environmental groups, a number of labor groups, the teachers, the nurses. It's all really important to have that support. I think they trust in me and what I'm able to bring to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But more important, I'm proud that over 40 elected officials throughout this district, in every single town in this district, are dedicated and supporting and enthusiastic about my campaign. Here in Holliston, as individual members, select board members, all of them are supporting me. Ben Sparrow, John Cronin, Tina Hine. I'm very excited to have their enthusiastic support, and so many others throughout the district. As Mary reminded us, please remember to vote either on or before November 8th. It's really important that you exercise your right. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. I need your help. It would be an absolute honor to serve the residents of Holliston, Hopkinton, Millis, and Sherburne in the years ahead. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, James. All right, and I wish you good luck. Please take care of yourself. I know it's a battle, but take care of yourself.
I will.
Okay,
Thanks.
folks. That's it for this show. You now have it in front of you. Two candidates, their questions, their perspectives. It's up to you, but don't forget to vote. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.